from the Ministry of Health.
Motorists, as Minister of Justice, I appeal to you, obey the road code, pay your ticket on time, and only go to court if the ticket is being contested. Close to 80% of matters coming to the parish courts are for traffic breaches. Let's work together to make our roads safe and ease the burden on our courts.
Me, I go show them my way of justice.
I'm abused.
I need legal advice. I don't deserve this.
The truth of the matter is, justice there for all of we. The Ministry of Justice has trained more than 5,600 persons in restorative justice practices. More than 200,000 victims have been supported by the victim services. Legal aid has reached thousands island-wide. Make we talk it out, not fight it out. Call 888 Justice today.
Each year, the Jamaican Parliament approves billions in tax dollars to buy goods and services for Jamaicans. Awarding contracts to private companies to provide public goods and services is called public procurement, and it is a major hotspot for corruption. Can citizens spot the red flags in public procurement and help the government protect our taxes? Yes, they can, and here are 6 to watch for. Direct contracting. When contracts are frequently awarded to one supplier without other companies competing to offer a better price and quality, we usually end up paying more and getting less. Contract splintering. Big projects need big money and higher level approvals. But if the contract is cut up into smaller ones, it won't need external approval from offices like the Public Procurement Commission or Cabinet. This makes it easier for contracts to avoid additional scrutiny. Timing of advertisements. Contracts advertised during distracting periods like the holidays can result in less competition and a really strong advantage for the favored company. Like Christmas time, work slows down and companies are less attentive to business opportunities. Emergency contracting. Claiming emergencies allows officials to legally bypass normal procurement rules, making it easier to award contracts to favored companies. Contract timing. Contracts awarded just before or after election can be payback for campaign support and not based on what Jamaicans really need. Collusion. And what if penalties are not enforced when work is poorly done? This could be a contractor and public official working together for private benefit. And if it is, this is collusion. These flags do not prove corruption, but they trigger questions that citizens must ask. So mind your business, Jamaica. Visit the JAMP Procurement Tracker to monitor government contracts. If you spot these flags, use our ATI tool to ask questions and demand accountability.
Start your mornings with a heart full of joy. Make the commitment to enjoying everyday life with PBCJ every Sunday at 6:30 a.m., Monday through Saturday at 6 a.m. Let each day be a new blessing.
Join your big sister Raquel as she reintroduces the cast of Vibrations and their educational adventures to the screen. See Ronson and the gang experience the world firsthand through interviews and interactions. Vibrations, where kids are taught about the world from someone they can relate to. Join us every Friday at 3:30 p.m. to hang out with your big sister Raquel and the kids of Vibrations. Right here on PBCJ, the People's Station.
Motorists, as Minister of Justice, I appeal to you, obey the road code, pay your ticket on time, and only go to court if the ticket is being contested. Close to 80% of matters coming to the parish courts are for traffic breaches. Let's work together to make our roads safe and ease the burden on our courts.
Peace is a choice we make every day. When we come together with love and understanding, we create a future free of violence and fear. Let's stand united, build bridges, and nurture hope for our children and our communities.
Motorists, as Minister of Justice, I appeal to you, obey the road code, pay your ticket on time, and only go to court if the ticket is being contested. Close to 80% of matters coming to the parish courts are for traffic breaches. Let's work together to make our roads safe and ease the burden on our courts.
Let's explore wild wonders at the San Diego Zoo.
Drop by on Sundays at 11:30 a.m. and Mondays at 2 p.m. to dive into the fascinating world of exotic animals on the People's Station.
Me, I go show them my way of justice.
I'm abused.
I need legal advice. I don't deserve this.
The truth of the matter is, justice there for all of we. The Ministry of Justice has trained more than 5,600 persons in restorative justice practices. More than 200,000 victims have been supported by the victim services. Legal aid has reached thousands island-wide. Make we talk it out, not fight it out. Call 888 Justice today.
Most Jamaicans will tell you corruption in politics is deep-rooted, and I just saw it said, and nothing can do about that. But actually, there is, and another 152 countries are doing it. It's called asset declaration, and it works best where citizens themselves understand it and help to ensure the law is enforced. Corruption happens when public officials abuse their power to benefit themselves, family, or associates. Jamaica's Integrity Commission Act was designed to prevent corruption, and here are 5 things you should know. 1. Under this law, every year MPs and senators must report what they earn, own, and owe, and if they don't, they'll be sanctioned. 2. Their report must include the same kind of information for their wife or husband and children. 3. If they get a gift worth more than $100,000 from anyone who's not family, they must declare it. 4. A summary of the declarations of our Prime Minister and opposition leader must be published where the public can read it. 5. Parliamentarians can now be prosecuted by the Integrity Commission. They can be fined up to $2 million or serve up to 2 years in prison if they don't file their declaration or if they give false information, and $500,000 for not filing on time or ignoring requests for information. Unfortunately, our parliamentarians made changes that prevent the public from knowing when they've broken the law or when they're being investigated. We really need to change that. Visit jampja.org to find out more about the act and to track if your MP is obeying this law. If they're not, JAMP's MP Tracker will help you write, tweet, or call your MP. Ask them, you submit your declaration yet? The Integrity Commission clear you? Let's help the Parliament stay honest. A message from the Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal, funded by the European Union and the Inter-American Development Bank in partnership with the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica.
Minister Morrison, Minister Williams, and MP Burchell. But we now have a quorum. So we can actually start. have another. Ah. So at this time, I call this session of the Joint Select Committee on Green Paper for the National Policy for Culture, Entertainment, and the Creative Economy. I now call this meeting to order, and I want to thank members who are present, who have made themselves available for this meeting. Senator Alan Bernard, who is actually here with us in person. Senator Thame, who is who has joined us virtually. Senator Rosemary Bennett Cooper has joined us virtually. Senator MP Dennis Daly, who is here with us as well, virtually. And he was here earlier for another Joint Select Committee meeting. So welcome, members. I also want to welcome the technical team who is present at this time. I'm asking members.
Chairman.
And Senator Marlon Morgan, welcome.
Good afternoon, Chairman. Afternoon, colleagues.
Thank you so much for joining us. I'm asking all our members who are online if you could please ensure that your camera is on, because you're live on PBCJ and on social media, and we would not want to have black screens showing up with your names. We would want you to be on camera. So before we begin, let us take a moment to seek guidance for the work before us. And I invite Senator Bernard to bless us. Thank you.
Please join me in the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Thank you, Member Bernard. Now let us proceed with the business of this committee. We have apologies for absence. So we have apology for absence from Senator Gale. We are now at item 3 on our agenda, apologies for absence. We have noted Madam Clerk, apologies from Senator Gale. And I now do my welcome and opening remarks. So members and the technical team present and presenters, it is a pleasure to welcome you to this is our 4th session as we continue this important and purposeful work. Each meeting of this committee builds on the last, and I want to take a moment to reflect on the ground we have covered so far. At our April 30 session, we were privileged to receive presentations from the National Gallery of Jamaica and the Jamaica Film and Television Association. Dr. Booth Gooden and Ms. Rawlins each brought depth, expertise, and candor to their submissions, and this committee is the better for it. I want to again express my appreciation for their contribution. We recall that the Jamaica Copyright Licensing Agency was unable to present at our last session, and we're glad to have them with us today. And I look forward to their contribution as well as that of the Jamaica Intellectual Property Office. So I extend a warm welcome to our presenters, and I thank them in advance for the time and thought they have invested in engaging with this process. Their perspectives matter, and they will help to shape a policy that is grounded in the realities of those who work in our cultural and creative industries every day. I want to especially acknowledge the presence of Permanent Secretary Dean Roy Bernard, one of 2 permanent secretaries in the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment, and Sport, and also to acknowledge the presence of Principal Director Joanne Archibald. We have the minutes before us, and I would ask members if they have had a chance to read the minutes, which are reflected here, February the 4th, March the 4th, and April the 30th. So we want to take these minutes. I would ask for these minutes to be confirmed by members who were present at those meetings, and then we would look at matters arising. So members, and one would so indicate that they would want to confirm these minutes. I know at the meeting of February the 4th, Member Daly was in attendance, and Member Bernard, as well as Member Bennett Cooper.
I so move, Chairman, to confirm the minutes.
Okay, Member Daly, you were present February the 4th.
And I move to second, Chairman.
Thank you, Member Morgan. So that would be February the 4th. Member Morgan, are you moving for March 4th because you were present at that meeting?
Indeed. So I'm moving to...
You're seconding the February the 4th, and you're moving for
to confirm the minutes
March
for
4th.
March meeting.
Okay.
Indeed, Chairman.
And are you doing for April 30 as well?
I'm not averse to that, so I'm moving to confirm the minutes from our April 4th meeting as well, Chairman.
And I would want to second that one.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Member Daly, you were not at the meeting for April 30.
Right, but you know that as a seconder, you can move whether you were at the meeting, yes or no, once you are privy to the minutes. I think you cannot move, but you can second.
Right. Senator Bernard and Senator Tame, you were at the meeting for April 30. Right, so you would second those?
I can second.
All right, thank you. So for April 30, confirmed by Senator Morgan, seconded by Senator Tame. For March 4th, Moved by Senator Morgan, seconded by Senator Bernard. Senator Bernard? Yes, you're seconding?
March 4th.
For March 4. And then for February, moved by MP Daly and seconded by Senator Morgan. Are there any matters arising from these minutes, or you would want us to just go directly into the presentations? Any matters arising? All right, no matters arising. We will now, I'm just looking at my notes here. So in relation to matters arising from April 30 meeting, I would like to advise the members that I have asked that all the entities we have on the list to present be written to find out whether they wish to present, or alternatively to submit written comments for the consideration of the committee. In addition to those entities added at the last meeting, we have also included the Jamaica Trade Board, Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, the Passport, Immigration and Citizenship Agencies, PICA, the Port Authority, Jamaica Customs Agency, Caribbean Import-Export Company Limited, the Broadcasting Commission, the Jamaica National Heritage Trust, the National Library of Jamaica, the Creative Production Training Center, the Culture and Creative Industries Alliance, and the Dream Weekend and Carnival organizers. So are members in agreement with the addition of these entities? Would you, if you are in agreement, I ask you to so indicate so that we can proceed to write to them. Not having any comments, I'm assuming that you're all in agreement and that we should indicate to the clerk. Yes, Bernard? Yes, Member Bernard?
I'm in agreement, Chair, but I'm just going back to the minutes, and organizations were added to the list, but I'm not sure if they were communicated to via letter. I want to get an update on that. I know I was asked, and I did submit a number of organizations to be added. They are added, but I'm just listening to your directive now, and I'm just wanting to get the clarity as to whether or not those organizations were written to before now, or they will be written to in this batch.
So those organizations will be written to now that I have the committee's agreement that they should be contacted. So they will be written to. So that was the only matter arising from the minutes. So I will now invite our first presenter, the Jamaica Copyright Licensing Agency, JAMCOPY, to make their presentation. Member Bernard, you wanted to make a comment, or you? Okay. I understand that JIPO you'd like to make your presentation. You'd like to be the first to make your presentation at this time?
If that's okay with you, Madam Chairman.
All right, so we will take your presentation.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right, and we will do jam copy after.
Thanks, Madam
All right,
Chair.
so Ms. Lily Claire Bellamy, head of the Jamaica Intellectual Property Office, will make her presentation to the committee at this time.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and I recognize the members of the Joint Select Committee. And we
if you could just hold a moment, the presentation will be on the screen, and we do not have hard copies for distribution to the technical team or to member Bernard, who is in person here with us. But you can follow the screen where there is a PowerPoint presentation being made by Ms. Bellamy. All right, proceed, Ms. Bellamy.
Okay, so first out, we appreciate the opportunity to be able to contribute to this discussion on the national policy for culture, entertainment, and the creative economy. We think it is a commendable document, a really robust policy, and we recognize the work of the Minister of Culture, Gender, Entertainment, and Sport, and the Minister of Culture, Gender, Entertainment, and Sport. We believe that this policy will further advance the cultural and creative industry in Jamaica. The presentation we're going to share basically drills down into what intellectual property is, because we believe it is important for us to focus on what the Intellectual Property Office does and how this can contribute to our creative economy and assist our creatives. I'll try and go through it quickly. So basically, JIPO was established to administer a modern and effective intellectual property system, and we're to act as a catalyst for international competitiveness, facilitating economic growth and national development. And this ties in closely with the policy as articulated in the Green Paper. The Intellectual Property Office was established under statute, the Jamaica Intellectual Property Office Act, and we basically are responsible for the administration of all intellectual property laws. Our other primary focus is to advise the Minister on matters relating to the administration of intellectual property laws and to promote the progressive development of IP rights in Jamaica. We're also empowered under the Act to carry out any other functions relating to intellectual property rights as a minister after consultation with the executive director may determine, and to exercise any power and perform any function conferred on the Intellectual Property Office by the Act or any relevant law, and to do all such other things as in the opinion of the office are necessary or incidental to the proper performance of its functions. So basically, intellectual property refers to creations of the mind. So once you can think of something and come up with it, that's considered intellectual property. The next chart is an organizational chart which shows the intellectual property rights. So intellectual property rights basically deals with copyright and related rights and industrial property. Historically, those were the two main areas of intellectual property rights. There has been an emerging, and I use the word emerging in inverted commas because basically this has been around from the 90s, and there was a fact-finding mission that had actually visited Jamaica in the 90s from the World Intellectual Property Organization that looks at the intellectual property of traditional communities, local communities, and indigenous persons. And that looks at the genetic resources, our traditional knowledge, and our traditional cultural expressions. And just, Madam Chairman, just to give it a body so that persons can understand when we speak about genetic resources and traditional knowledge. I'll use an example which might be familiar to most persons. Historically, you may have been growing up and you've seen a bottle, a flask, a white rum flask, and there are leaves stuck in that white rum. The leaves would be the genetic resource. The traditional knowledge would be knowing that to place those leaves in that white rum, the potion that comes from it can assist with the treatment of various illnesses. So that is what that is looking at. So it is the World Intellectual Property Organization, one of the international organizations that we work closely with in Jamaica, recognized that this was a lacuna, that this knowledge was not getting its proper intellectual property rights protection. So this is an area that has been added. When we speak about traditional cultural expressions, we're looking at things like folklore. So the oral traditions that we have and the sharing of information and knowledge would fall there. So industrial property covers trademarks, designs, patents, utility models, and geographical indications. So when you put all of these together, you come up with intellectual property. Okay, I mentioned the World Intellectual Property Organization. This is the United Nations agency with responsibility for all things related to intellectual property, and Jamaica has been a member of that body since 1978. The other international organization that we work closely with is the World Trade Organization. And most of us in here would know that the World Trade Organization replaced the GATT and other international treaties. And the significance of the World Trade Organization and intellectual property is that the establishment of the agreement on the trade-related aspects of intellectual property rights centered the whole area of intellectual property as a trade issue. So this became really important, and it signaled a shift in how intellectual property was looked at and recognized internationally. So a trademark, and I have, of course, I've used the Intellectual Property Office trademark as my logo for this. So a trademark is any sign that is capable of being graphically represented, distinguishing the goods or services of one entity from another. It can be a sign, a word, a number, a smell, or a sound. And once you make that application, you get it for 10 years, and it's renewable. Designs. It's the ornamental or aesthetic aspect of an article, and it may consist of three-dimensional features such as the shape, surface of the article, or any two-dimensional features such as patterns, lines, or colors. And you might wonder, how is this of relevance in our creative economy? I will go back in time. Since the World Cup just ended, the world, in 1998, which is history for a lot of persons, when Jamaica qualified for the FIFA World Cup, the jersey that we wore, that design was protected at the Intellectual Property Office. So designs are an important and critical part of our creative economy, and it's something that our creatives need to focus on. I know historically there's been a lot of focus on copyright and related rights, but we need to understand that all the areas of intellectual property are important for the culture and the creative industry sector. The next one would be patents, inventions. And when we come back to that example that I shared of the genetic resource and the associated traditional knowledge, sometimes we come up with solutions to problems that have the ability to be protected as an invention, and we share it. And in my comments, well, I'll just share it now and then I'll have to share it later. A lot of the times we give away our intellectual property as creatives without even recognizing that we're doing it. So somebody comes and visits with us, and we share everything. And they utilize what we have shared with them, and they end up with a product or a process. Sometimes they're kind and they send you back a book or something to say thank you, but they are benefiting from your knowledge. They have an invention, they have filed it, they have protected it, and you're left with a letter of thanks, if you're that lucky, or they may have offered you lunch. And I think sometimes, and when I looked at the policy and I recognized there are a lot of areas where, you know, there's gray areas, but sometimes I think part of the challenge is that we as a people are very generous. So if somebody comes, we're very hospitable and we tell them everything, not recognizing that we're actually giving away our intellectual property rights to them. Utility models, and I've used as an example that ballpoint pen. The cap to cover the ballpoint pen would be an example of a utility model. It doesn't quite make the mark to be an invention. And again, we have our creatives that come up with solutions to problems that may not quite meet the bar to be protected as an invention, but they could get a utility model for it. And that's something we also need to recognize. That protection lasts for 10 years. So our law was amended in 2020, and it was that amendment of the law that recognized utility models, because what we found at the Intellectual Property Office was that a number of persons who came in with applications for an invention, they didn't quite make the mark for an invention. What they really had was a utility model, and there was that gap in our legislation. That gap has been addressed. And that law, that Patent and Designs Act, also facilitated the accession of Jamaica and ratification to the Patent Cooperation Treaty, another treaty that enables us in Jamaica to make an application to protect our inventions in other countries that are party to that Patent Cooperation Treaty. Geographical indications. In the green paper that was presented, there were a number of references to our culinary arts and the gastronomy of Jamaica. This is an area where the geographical indication would become relevant and that could be utilized to help our creatives. Perhaps one of the most famous geographical indications would be Champagne from the Champagne region of France. And if we come closer to our region, there's tequila. So people might be able to recognize and say, okay, in Jamaica, one of our well-known geographical indications, which shows its antecedents from before we were colonized, would be jerk. So the traditional method of doing jerk would have been to dig a pit, use a pimento. So again, our genetic resources. So you have that long tradition associated with something that we take for granted that we have now been able to protect as a geographical indication. And that lasts forever. So while other intellectual property rights have a time limit, we don't have that for a geographical indication. Then we come to the area which is perhaps the area that we're most well known for, would be the area of copyright and related rights. And this area speaks to original creations. So copyright is a legal right that allows creators of works to reproduce, distribute, perform, adapt, communicate, or make available to the public those works. And one thing to remember is that it needs to be tangible. So sharing it orally is not good. You need to put it down in a tangible way so that persons are aware that this is yours. So before I get to the CMOs, just want to say for the copyright and related rights, we are people that, even though we're moving away from paper into the digital age, our creatives like to be able to touch and feel. So the Intellectual Property Office, in response to requests from members of the public, instituted a voluntary registration system for copyright. So creatives have an opportunity, and this also helps to stop any dispute. So if you have come up with a work, you can go in the presence of a justice of the peace, declare that you are the owner or the author of this work, make an application to the Intellectual Property Office, and we will provide you with a certificate. And I must tell you, it is well used, and some of our most famous artists use that voluntary copyright registration system because they want to have, instead of the poor man's copyright, which is sending back a registered mail, a copy of your work by registered mail to yourself, they like to be able to hold on to that certificate. And the good thing about that is it is an easy way to address areas of dispute because you have that certificate as proof. The next one is the collective management organizations, and I know we have one collective management organization here today. Jamaica is blessed with 3 really active collective management organizations, and basically the Copyright Act of Jamaica facilitates the establishment of these collective management organizations. And again, in response to queries, because we know that there are some members of our society who utilize the works of creatives and believe that they should have free access. Well, the collective management organizations are licensing bodies because, as you know, your copyright is your property. So if somebody who needs to use your property, they need to pay to use your property. And the collective management organizations facilitate that. So as I mentioned, there are 3 Jamaican collective management organizations. We have JIPO, the Jamaica Association of Composers, Authors, and Publishers, the Jamaica Music Society, and I believe both of those collective management organizations presented at this on the green paper. And today we have the JAM copy, the Jamaica Copyright Licensing Authority, yes, who will also be presenting. I spoke to the voluntary copyright registration system. It came into effect in 2015, and I've just shared the number of works that we have had and the persons who have used it. And this ranges from performing artists to persons from academia. So it is really a very active system that is being used. Next one. I just wanted to share the number of industrial property registrations that we have had, that we have on our register and are currently active. And just to indicate that we have become party to a number of international treaties to be able to allow our creatives to be able to access more easily international registration of their works. So we have the Madrid Protocol, which basically deals with trademarks. We have the Hague, which deals with designs, and we have the Patent Corporation Treaty, which deals with which deals with patents and utility models. Next one. Next one. Next one. Okay. If your intellectual property is infringed, you have a course of action, and all of the intellectual property laws speaks to both criminal and civil penalties. So we encourage persons, if your intellectual property is infringed, to take the time to enforce, because Jamaica is one of the few jurisdictions in the world that actually has a specialized investigation branch of the Jamaica Constabulary Force that deals with the enforcement of intellectual property rights. Okay, so in terms of comments on the green paper, as we mentioned at the outset, we think it is a robust green paper. There are areas that need tweaking, but in the main, we think it is an excellent paper. We note on page 27 of the green paper the comments that emanated from UNCTAD, and we are supportive of those comments. We also spoke in the presentation to the ratification of a number of international intellectual property rights treaties that we have done since 2015. Bearing in mind that we're now in 2026, and I know some of the foundation for this green paper came from the Vision 2030 document. So these are treaties that we have subsequently acceded to and become party to. Okay, I mentioned that we are also protected in the digital environment due to the WIPO Internet Treaties and being party to BER. We have the Madrid and patents. Okay, this is how you can get in touch with us. And I just wanted, before I stop speaking, I just wanted to add a few more points. So the PowerPoint looked at basically what we do as an intellectual property office, and I interspersed some of my comments as it regards to the Green Paper. There were 9 sections in the Green Paper, and in the situational analysis, which would have been number 3, if you look in the table of contents, we note the recommendation that was made at the Conference of Heads of Government in the Bahamas in February 2015, subsequently ratified in Barbados in 2015. And we would just extract one of the 10 articles that was mentioned there, the one that dealt with the ratification of international treaties and conventions on culture and intellectual property, and extension of the period of intellectual property protection for copyright and related rights. Well, we have done a lot of work in that area, and I think that should be noted. I mentioned in the Green Paper also spoke about, in 2.9, implementation, monitoring, and the evaluation framework, the preservation of Jamaica's culture and heritage. And I think the work of the World Intellectual Property Organization Intergovernmental Committee on Genetic Resources, Traditional Knowledge, and Traditional Cultural Expressions is something that should be noted. And in fact, arising from the work of that Intergovernmental Committee, there has been one treaty, and that treaty deals with associated traditional knowledge and genetic resources, and Jamaica is actually in the process of acceding to that treaty and amending our Patent and Designs Act. And this would facilitate a disclosure requirement. So if someone comes into the Intellectual Property Office to make an application for an invention, they have to disclose whether they had gotten this information to facilitate the establishment of their patent through discussions or dialogue with somebody from our society. We mentioned the UNCTAD 2015 Global Creative Economy Report, and that report identified intellectual property as one of the critical areas. And I think one area that the Green Paper, and I'm not sure if we have expanded it enough, but I think to facilitate the process, we need to find a way to encourage our creatives to basically recognize the importance of utilization of all aspects of intellectual property rights and not just the copyright, because it is in the recognition and the use of all of the tools of intellectual property that you are able to find economic sustainability. Madam Chair, I would also like to direct your attention to the commercialization on page 31, where we spoke about IP and commercialization, and we again highlight and recognize and support the significance and importance of the collective management organizations, because they are how some of our creatives have the ability to earn. I spoke to the culinary and gastronomy, which occurs after page 34, and I think what we need to do is to highlight our culture with our food and to utilize the geographical indications aspect of the intellectual property. I think, and perhaps I think I will, the policy framework on page 52, which spoke to the governance structure and institutional strengthening. I think in keeping with the digital transformation that the government is supporting, that perhaps what we could look at is the establishment of an app that would direct creatives to existing resources. So, for example, somebody comes to the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sports. They're a young creative, and they don't have a clue about intellectual property. They don't have a clue about registering a business. And if we could just say to them, here, if you look at this app, it would guide you through the steps. And it would also provide a link to, let's say, you need information on how to register a trademark. It would send you straight to the Intellectual Property Office. If you need to establish and register a company, it would send you straight to the company. So instead of adding another layer, it would help the person to know, okay, I am in Westmoreland. I need to establish my business properly. I want to formalize it. So I need to register at the company's office. But in addition, I have a unique design. I need to protect it. So they can apply online to the Intellectual Property Office utilizing that app to register and protect their design. They could apply to the Companies Office of Jamaica. The other thing which I think we could also consider, and this is in keeping with the whole concept of joined up government, the Jamaica Business Development Corporation has a number of incubators, and they deal with the fashion sector, they deal with jewelry making. So again, the app could direct them to the JBDC. Do you need to be guided from your concept to the expansion of your business? The JBDC can assist you with it. The Intellectual Property Office can assist you with the registering of your intellectual property, and the Companies Office can help you with registering your business name or registering your company. So from the comfort of your home, utilizing this app, you could get all of these things done. So it would save you transportation costs, and it would make the process, I think, much easier. And also, it would direct the person to individuals who have the knowledge and the experience to guide them through the process. In terms, on page 55, we have a partnership with the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sports, a loose partnership, and we note the recommendation on page 55, and we would welcome that opportunity to continue that partnership. It's perhaps coincidental, but I'm not sure, Madam Chairman, if you were aware of the recent document that came out that showed the massive injection that another country is giving to their creative sector. So when I saw on page 60 about the capital injection, I thought this is perfect, because we need a capital injection to be able to facilitate the development of our creatives. And if we could get grant funding to help them. So, okay, you don't have the money now, so you're going to get some grants that will help you to establish your company, pay for your intellectual property rights. I know, for example, there are agencies that assist with patents, so they will assist you with grant funds to pay for that. So I think we need to look at that. The other thing we need to do is, and this is, I guess, is a challenge, but it's to encourage our creatives to, as far as possible, utilize professionals to assist them when they are trying to establish. Because sometimes you go on the internet and the information you pull down may not necessarily be relevant to your particular situation, and so you think you're covered, but you are exposed. On page 40, when we speak to Jamaica's sports culture, and I'll just end with this, the policy recognizes the cultural aspects and importance, and it should be noted that importance of intellectual property, though not specifically articulated, is encapsulated by the recognition of some of our sporting icons. We mentioned Ambassador Usain Bolt, and I think the significance of of this ambassador is, though he's no longer completing, he is and was and has been associated with the luxury watchmaker Hugh Bolt. And they created a 200 bespoke watch. 200. It cost 30,000 US. And basically, the blurb on their site is, it says, it encapsulates Usain's story from the Jamaican soil that forged his speed to the gold engraved mantra, anything is possible, don't think limits. The finish line is never the end, it's the next beginning. And I think this cultural and creative enterprises policy is our beginning. It's not a finish line, and I think this is a good starting ground, and we are supportive of it, and thanks for the opportunity to present. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bellamy. The work of JIPO is key to the viability and success of our entertainment, cultural, and creative industries. And our creatives thrive when they can protect and profit from their work. So JIPO provides the essential framework, registering copyrights, trademarks, and patents to support musicians, artisans, and creative and cultural entrepreneurs across Jamaica. And so we really thank you for the work you're doing. This protection turns creative talent into sustainable livelihoods, preserves our cultural heritage, and strengthens Brand Jamaica and our position in the global creative economy. I always emphasize that IP rights protection is a pillar of this policy, and getting this right will be an important measure of our success. At this point, I would like to invite our members to make their presentations, to ask their questions, and to indicate their comments. So I invite members, please, to make your comments in relation to Ms. Bellamy's presentation. So I recognize Senator Bernard, and you could proceed.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thanks for the presentation, Ms. Bellamy. I saw the electronic version, and I'm happy that you provided a verbal addendum to it. I had so many questions, 5 pages in fact, but it's now down to 2, having listened to the addendum verbally. I think the JIPO has an important role to play in terms of this policy. And I'm wondering if you think that the policy captures the organization's leadership role adequately. I know you see in bold quote, it's a start, but I was just wondering, again, that was based primarily on the presentation that came up on the screen, which was pretty much administrative and not substantive. So I'm just wondering. And so it's 2 questions, but they are joined. So your role, your leadership role, JIPO's leadership role. I'm wondering if you believe that.
Member Bernard, if you could raise your mic and speak into your mic, please. Thank you.
So the question is, the first question, or the first of the 2-part question, is do you think JIPO's leadership role is adequately captured in the policy? And I say that in the context of this proposed help desk, intellectual property help desk, that will be located in the ministry. And if you think that might either duplicate or reduce JIPO's important leadership role in this policy.
May I? Yes? Okay.
Please go ahead, Ms. Bellamy.
Thank you for that question. My articulation of the app was basically in response to the help desk, because I think a help desk can provide assistance, but I think it's always better to go to the direct source, because a person at a help desk can only provide so much. We actually have what are referred to as technology innovation support centers. There's one that has been established and operational at the University of the West Indies, but they work in close collaboration with the Intellectual Property Office, because it's difficult for a help desk to actually capture all that is needed from the point of view. So my recommendation from our office was that in terms of how we're going as a digital economy, we think an app that would direct persons to the source, basically, so that you can get, so you have a question about how to register a trademark. So you go to the help desk and the person says, this is what you need to do. But if you come to directly to the Intellectual Property Office and you say to us, I'd like to register a trademark, we can say to you, okay, these are the classes that are available. Would you like to do it now? And we could literally walk you through the process instead of you getting the information and then having to come back for the next step, which is the actual application for the registration. So we think, in keeping with the digital transformation that we're going through as a country, that it would be good to have an app that would direct persons rather than a help desk. Because when you come to the Intellectual Property Office, you have several experts there who can give you specific information on a specific area that you are interested in and really drill down with providing the information.
The leadership role of JIPO, do you think it's adequately captured in the policy? I think it's...
Could you turn your mic on if you are going to respond?
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just asking the member if he could just expand on what he meant in terms of the question, so that I really answer the direct question. Thank you.
The importance of intellectual property, as you have articulated. And while you didn't speak to specifics, I think you regularly allude to conventions that you're a part of and signed up to, etc. And those are, and you added some new ones. But I didn't hear you say, anything definitively about the role, the important role of JIPO, and if that is captured adequately across. I don't see JIPO as, is to be relegated to page 55 in 2-3 paragraphs. I kind of think JIPO is cross-cutting, that should run through, given the importance of the property, of ownership of the property and the commercialization of it. And I'm just wondering if you think that JIPO is adequately captured across the full gamut of the policy, or if it is okay with you to be that, I think, 4 paragraphs from page 54, 55.
Okay, thanks for the question. No, well, in terms of how I looked at it was that this is a green paper dealing with the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport that's looking at the creative economy and how other ministries, departments and agencies can facilitate the process. So our role is an established role. We're established under statute. The help desk would be an adjunct, but I don't see it subsuming the role of the Intellectual Property Office, because there's a clear role, which is also why I mentioned and articulated the World Trade Organization, because what I also didn't mention was that there are other international organizations that we work closely and directly with. For example, during the COVID-19 pandemic, the Intellectual Property Office had a really strong role and working relationship with our Ministry of Health and Wellness in terms of being the issues associated with protection afforded under patents to inventions. So in fact, we are in active discussions right now with the Ministry of Health and Wellness as it relates to a treaty that they're trying to arrive at out of the World Health Organization. So we're peripheral in the policy because I think we're captured elsewhere.
You want to use the mic, please?
I mean, it's important, you know, because your colleague that's coming up, John Copy, isn't even mentioned in the policy. John Copy is coming next to present. One of the concerns of it, they're not even mentioned in the policy. And I think they're very important. Yeah. And that's why I speak to your leadership role, you know, and if you're comfortable. And what I'm getting is that because you're captured elsewhere, you accept your word is peripheral role in the policy. That was your word.
This is why, sorry, Madam Chair, through you to the member. This is why I mentioned, I made the time to do the presentation to focus on the other areas of intellectual property and not just copyright and related rights. Because copyright and related rights is important and it's critical, which is why I mentioned the collective management organizations, but that is only one small aspect of intellectual property. The other areas of intellectual property, the areas of industrial property, and the new emerging areas are also important and critical. They have to be addressed and to be dealt with. So I think I tried in the presentation to show that all the areas of intellectual property are important.
But remember now that it's a joint select committee on culture and the creatives, you know? And so I accept your wife gamut elsewhere, but I was looking to hear a lot more details from you on this policy. I know how important you are to this policy and that you should be reflected as such in this policy because I think you are. But I accept the comment.
Thank you, Member Bernard, and thank you, Ms. Bellamy. I want to recognize Member Bennett Cooper and ask her to make her comments now, after which I will invite P.S. Bernard to also make comments. So, Member Bennett Cooper, could you go ahead, please?
Thank you so very much, Chair. And thanks to Ms. Bellamy for what I consider an excellent presentation. I know that you mentioned, let me see your words, that there are areas in the policy that need tweaking, and in reference to the Green Paper. And I wonder if you could expand on that for us. What are these areas and what's the nature and scope of tweaking that you would hope for? And in doing so, if you could reflect on who you are and what you do and make a recommendation or two to us as to what areas do you think need improvement, whether it is in the context of legislative amendment, new legislation, or a policy shift, and how can we help?
Yes, Ms. Bellamy, please go ahead.
I'm trying to write down all out.
Okay.
I got the legislative amendments and policy shifts.
Yes, if it really is just, I fleshed it out in that way, just to kind of assist in focusing your mind as to what you may think is important. But it could be that the areas that you think are in need of improvement are not those. It could be elsewhere. But I am curious to know what your thoughts on regarding that.
Okay, thanks for the question. Well, as I was trying to articulate earlier, basically, we think the focus of the policy needs to be more expansive as it relates to the other areas of intellectual property. So there is the recognition of copyright and related rights. We mentioned our collective management organizations who have presented. But if we're looking at culture and the creative economy, there are several other areas that we need to look at. for example, we have our craft industry. That area needs to be looked at and fleshed out. There is an existing craft policy. The members of that community can benefit from having collective organizations that make applications to protect their craft items as geographical indications. They can also protect using the design system. That's one area. The other thing is our creatives need to understand that, yes, you are able to produce 10 copies of a good, but intellectual property facilitates you being able to license what you produce on a larger scale. So you have a fantastic idea for how to produce a light that doesn't even need the sun, and it will work. But you cannot produce it to the scale that would make it viable or economically sustainable. However, what you could do is protect that innovation that you have come up with, and then seek to get someone to produce it on your behalf. Then you need a licensing agreement, a proper licensing agreement that would allow you to do that. That is really not addressed in the policy. But so that's just two of the areas. So if you look from the Conference on the Heads of Government conference that took place in 2015 in the Bahamas, and that was ratified in Barbados in 2015 July, recognized that there were certain areas that needed to be addressed. Some of those areas have actually been addressed. So when that decision was taken, Jamaica did not recognize persons who were blind, visually impaired, or otherwise print disabled. We now have acceded to the Marrakesh Treaty, which recognizes those persons and allow them to utilize copyrighted works without infringing copyright, because it is a specialized group of persons who need to be able to access works that they can use those works. And for example, this has been adopted wholesale, and in the Caribbean Examinations Council, there are provisions that are made for students who have print disabilities so they can access works without difficulty. So that wasn't in the policy, but there are several treaties that are established that are operational in Jamaica that are not in the policy. But I guess I was looking at it from the point of view that we do have joined up government. So the policy may not touch on every single aspect of intellectual property, but we do work together. So that was how I was looking at it from that point of view. I don't know if that addresses your questions, member.
Yes, it does. Thank you. I really just want to get from you your perspective. And I did find that your oral addendum to the presentation was very helpful to take us some way to that point. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. At this time, I'll invite Permanent Secretary Dean Robert Bernard to make his comments.
Thank you, Chair. I just felt it necessary to just address a few points raised by my namesake, Senator Alan Bernard, member. You spoke about the leadership role of JIPO, and I just want to assure you that the partnership with JIPO has been a strong one. I know Lily Claire Bellamy said it's a loose one, and I took note of that, Lily Claire, and if it is at all loose, it has to be strengthened. I'm figuring that she probably be referring to a formalization of the partnership, and so just indicating that I took note of that, and that would have come from your question as well. So it's a very good question. The policy as it is it's overarching, and it speaks to the culture and creative economy. The copyright aspect and the intellectual property aspect is very important to preserve the works of our creatives. And therefore, this policy is not a policy that we took lightly without even looking at the Copyright Act, because there is a legislation that speaks to copyright. So I'm assuring you that certainly we have taken into account that. And copyright is not just, if the policy indicates that it's just on a few pages, it is indeed cross-cutting, because no creative enter into works without the thinking that these are works that are going to be preserved and protected and for which they are going to earn over time. So I'm just giving the assurance, and the comments, even as we listen to them, are comments that we are going to take on board. And certainly we'll be in touch again with Lily Claire, even with the amendments to the copyright legislation, just in recent times. We have had long discussions on them as it relates to the partnership that we have with JIPO. So I just want to give that assurance. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, P.S. Bernard. Any other of our members would wish to ask questions of Ms. Bellamy or make a comment? I want to, at this point, indicate that the ministry, of course, has included in this policy document the establishing of a help desk, not to replace or replicate the work of other ministries, departments, and agencies, but to support their work in providing important information to practitioners with whom we have to interact. And one of the critical functions of this help desk will be to advise ECCI practitioners, that's entertainment, culture, and creative industry practitioners, on copyright protection and enforcement, including royalty collection mechanisms. So we will be providing that help desk, which will help practitioners to be more informed and how to access the services that are available through MDAs and other entities that exist in the creative sector. So I just want to thank Ms. Bellamy for her presentation and for members for asking questions and getting clarification in this area. And at this point now, I would want to invite JAMCOPY to make its presentation at this time. I'm going to ask Senator Marlon Morgan, who is here virtually. He's here? He's still here? He's not on? All right, so Senator Morgan is not on now, so I'm going to ask Senator Bennett Cooper to chair the meeting virtually for me. Senator Cooper? Bennett Cooper?
Yes, Madam Chair.
I'm going to ask you to chair, although you're virtual, you could chair the meeting for me while I step away for a moment from the mic. Okay?
Very well.
Right. The presenter will be Ms. Philippa Davis, making a presentation on behalf of Jamaica Copyright Licensing Agency, JAMCOPY. All right? So thank you. And Senator, please take over the chair for me temporarily. Thank you.
Very well, Minister. So we will now be taking the presentation from Jam Copy, and we'll hear from the presenter, Philippa Davis. You may proceed, ma'am. Is there
Yes, it's on now. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Chairman in the chamber and virtually. Good afternoon to the members of the Joint Select Committee, officials of the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sports, and the technical team. Good afternoon to colleagues in the chamber and attendees in the gallery. My name is Philippa Davies. I'm the Legal and Operations Consultant with the Jamaican Copyright Licensing Agency. And with me is Jamila Kasim, the Licensing and Client Services Manager. We would have sent our presentation, a soft copy, to the clerk ahead of today's meeting. Well, Jam Copy thanks this Joint Select Committee on this green paper for the opportunity to share information about the role and work of Jam Copy to the creative economy and to make comments on the green paper. And we welcome the examination of the cultural and creative industries in Jamaica through this national policy, and which we see as representing the government of Jamaica's declaration of its responsibility to, quote, protect, promote, and develop Jamaica's culture and heritage, and seeking out ways to maximize opportunities for culture, entertainment, and the creative economy, end of quote. The policy rightly acknowledges the necessity of an effective framework for intellectual property within which creative works are protected and commercialized. Any policy on this industry must recognize the foundational role of IP in the design and implementation of an enabling legal and economic environment that supports sustainable livelihoods in the entertainment, cultural, and creative sector. And I was heartened to hear Chairman Green say that she sees IP as a pillar for the industry, and we fully agree. Now, let me inform you of our credentials. The Jamaican Copyright Licensing Agency, Jam Copy, was established in 1998 under the Copyright Act of Jamaica and the Companies Act as the National Collective Management Organization, CMO, for authors and publishers of text and image-based printed material. In other words, literary and visual works in print. Jam Copy is a licensing body by virtue of Section 87 of the Copyright Act and by Cabinet Note number 22 of 1999 and decision June 28, 1999, the government of Jamaica acknowledged the establishment of Jam Copy and the government's own expected compliance with the Copyright Act. Now, Jam Copy can be classified as a rights management body, which is acknowledged in the policy when it speaks of business development associations, some of which function as rights management bodies, which are established to help protect the rights of artists. As the executive director of JIPO pointed out, Jam Copy is one of 3 such rights management bodies in Jamaica, each with its own specialized industry focus. So Jacob and Jam specialize in licensing musical works, and Jam Copy, as a reproduction rights organization, we manage copyright in the literary and artistic works published in print. Now let me drill a little further about the Copyright Act. It recognizes different types of works, literary, artistic, musical, and dramatic works. But the copyright law gives creators of these works exclusive rights to copy the work, issue copies to the public, have the work performed, included in a broadcast or cable program, or make an adaptation, or have their work communicated to the public by wire or wireless means. Anyone wishing to exercise these rights legally require the authorization or the permission of the copyright owner. And so that means educational institutions, businesses, government offices, general users who copy extracts of works in large quantities are required to get the permission or a license from the rights holder of the work, unless this use benefits from an exception under the Copyright Act. And where it is impractical for the copyright owner to license a large body of users, such as all of the primary or secondary schools in Jamaica, a licensing body like JamCopy acts as a bridge between the rights holder and the user to facilitate obtaining that legal permission and to transmit the payment or the royalty for the authorized use. Now, when we speak about copy, we don't just mean photocopying. We mean, quite literally, any creation of the replica of the work. So whether it's in hard copy or it's in digital. Now, JamCopy represents 900 and growing Jamaican authors and publishers of a diversity of genres, whether it's poetry or novels, textbooks, newspapers, magazines, academic journals. And among our affiliates are Mervyn Morris, a former poet laureate, the estate of the late Honorable Louise Bennett Coverley, award-winning novelist Roland Watson Grant, well-known media personality Dr. Terry Carell Reid, as well as fine artist Lennox Coke, illustrator Rachel Morris, as well as publishers such as The Gleaner, Jamaica Observer, UE Press, and Ian Randall Publishers, as well as the composer, the late Major Joe Williams of Zouave Music. Now, we don't only represent those 900 Jamaicans, we represent thousands more through our reciprocal bilateral agreements with our equivalents in over 44 territories across the world, including the USA, the UK, Canada, Brazil, Panama, South Africa, Ghana, Botswana, Japan, Barbados, Belize, Eastern Caribbean, Trinidad and Tobago, among others. And therefore, we are the local presence of an international network. And to use the words of the policy, JamCopy and its fellow CMOs are participants in a globalizing culture and creative outputs, supporting the creative economy, prioritizing practitioners, end of quote. We have regional partnerships. We're not alone in the Caribbean. There is the Caribbean Reproduction Rights Organization, CAROSA, which was established as a regional organization to facilitate multi-territorial licensing in the Caribbean by the 5 RROs. So we have colleagues in Trinidad and Tobago, in Barbados, in Belize, and the Eastern Caribbean. And the CAROSA Secretariat is situated in our offices here in Jamaica. And JamCopy is a member of the International Federation of Reproduction Rights Organizations, IFRO, which comprises 160 members from 90 countries. And JamCopy also has a representative on the IFRO Board of Directors. Now, among our licensees, that is the local users of copyright works, and who are copyright compliant because they have taken out a license from JamCopy, we have the University of Technology Jamaica, the UE, MONA, Shortwood Teachers College, the Caribbean Military Academy, Sandals Corporate University, the Government of Jamaica itself, Hart Trust, G.C. Foster College, among others. Now, how have we contributed to the Jamaican creative industry? Well, for the 28 years of our existence, JamCopy has supported the sustainable development of the Jamaican literary industry. For example, we established a cultural fund. Also, the Jamaican Children's Book Collective was launched this very month. This book collective aims to promote literacy and the reading habit by ensuring that Jamaican children have access to a diverse range of quality indigenous literature, which is culturally relevant, age-appropriate, and engages their interest. This collective has been implemented in partnership with the Book Industry Association of Jamaica, the Jamaica Library Service, and the Jamaica Book Festival. And the intention is to place sets of selected publications funded by the project in the children's section of each parish library. The call for submissions is now open until August 24, And authors and publishers of children's literature can obtain further information at the website JamaicanChildren'sBookCollective.com. Jam Copy also launched the Lignum Vitae Writing Awards to stimulate and celebrate excellence in Jamaican literature and to raise the stature of writers and writing in Jamaica and the value of literature to the continued development of the nation's cultural landscape and its citizens. In previous years, we have supported the Poet Laureate Program under the auspices of the National Library of Jamaica. We've also supported the JCDC Annual Festival Song Competition, the National Gospel Song Competition, and the National Creative Writing Competition. We also support the Jamaica Poets Nomadic College and School Tours, the Drawing Room Project, as well as the Book Industry Association's Book Festival, the Independent Voices Literary Festival, and the Two Seasons Talking Trees Literary Festival. Let me now comment specifically on the Green Paper, on the policy before us. Now, licensing agreements are integral to securing fair compensation for creators from the varied uses of their works. The creative industries will be well served through the establishment of an IP framework that enables the core value and importance of these agreements. I'd like to make 5 comments on the policy with recommendations. Now, the policy, first of all, foundational importance of copyright to communication and education. The policy remarks that compared to music, the literary arts have not traditionally been recognized as high-income generating activities, and as a result have not received sufficient investment or financial support to enable practitioners to fully commit to their artistic development. This is true and unfortunate, notwithstanding the prowess of Jamaican authors to, quote, resonate with the literati, but also deeply connect with the broader community, offering profound insights into the Jamaican experience, end of quote. Undoubtedly, reading and writing are foundational and fundamental pillars of any educational system and are unavoidable for communication of every subject matter under the sun. In fact, the policy is itself a literary work with artistic illustrations, and the government would enjoy copyright in that publication. The public's daily interaction with and continuous use of copyright-protected literary and artistic works is underappreciated, which calls for transformation. And so our recommendation is that the strategy and implementation plan on page 77 should include as a goal increasing national awareness of copyright and the supporting copyright system. An island-wide sensitization program has been mentioned, targeting the ECCI and related business to promote cultural sensitivity. This is under the activities column, goal 1.7, page 76. Well, we can include in there island-wide sensitization about copyright. In fact, the ubiquitous presence and public engagement with copyright, the different types of copyright and the uses of copyright. And there needs to be increased awareness of the availability of licensing to ensure legal access to and use of copyright-protected works. This will encourage the practice of copyright licensing as an integral feature of fostering a respectful culture. Second, building accurate statistical data banks on the value of the local copyright industry. In the ECCI situational analysis, this is pages 43 and 44 of the policy, the creative industry sector contribution to the national economy as of December 2023 only mentions the royalty distribution figures of one Jamaican CMO, but that doesn't represent the totality of the CMO's contribution to the national economy. Since Jam Copy began its first royalty distribution in 2005 at a mere 546,000 Jamaican dollars back in 2005, 21 years later, we have distributed to our membership over $425 million. And the bulk of our royalties are paid to Jamaican authors and publishers in Jamaica. The benefit is earned and returned to the local economy for building up the creative industry sector. And so our recommendation is that the cultural satellite account projected for integration in Jamaica's planning and statistical agencies could assist in providing statistical reporting of the industry's contributions, of all the participants in the industry, their contribution to the economy. Number 3, the executive director of JIPO had mentioned the World Intellectual Property Organization. Well, we should update the study on the contribution of copyright sectors to the national economy of Jamaica. So it's almost 20 years since the release of the pivotal 2008 WIPO Commission study on the contribution of the copyright sectors to our economy. And that study reported that the overall contribution of the copyright sector contributed to Jamaican $29 billion in producers' value at the 1996 prices, or 4.8% of GDP. That's not a small percentage. And the sector also accounted for 3.3% of employment. The main contributing sectors were radio and television, press and literature, music, and theatrical productions. The question arises, how have the copyright sectors performed since 2008? What are the areas or activities in need of targeted attention? Well, our recommendation is that as the WIPO model and methodology is available to member states, which would include Jamaica, it is accessible for replication. And so an update to this study could be pursued as part of the implementation of the policy in furtherance of Objective 2.7, that's on page 15. The below policy rationale could facilitate this updated study. This existing rationale could facilitate this study. Bullet point 7, which says, establish a comprehensive framework to strengthen resilience and sustainability of cultural and creative practitioners and communities. That includes social protection measures, risk analysis tools, resilience initiatives, and other supportive mechanisms. And also bullet point 9 could also facilitate it, which says, enhance and streamline data collection systems, reporting frameworks, and quantify the contribution of the ECCI to the economy. Number 4, we support the recommendations made by JAMS, the Jamaica Music Society, who presented to the committee in February, when they say that the policy should explicitly position CMOs as key institutions in the IP infrastructure of Jamaica's creative economy framework, integrate copyright licensing requirements into administrative systems, and mandate structured enforcement harmonization across ministries. For example, mentioned in JAM copy in the policy, and the importance of a JAM copy license for copying taking place in primary and secondary schools should be explicitly enshrined in ministry policies. Fifth and final, regulations on the operation of collective management organizations. And I do regret that our colleagues from JIPO have left already. The policy cites industry concerns about the calculation, collection, and distribution of royalties, and that the industry is demanding a more transparent and accountable system for the use of musical works. The policy also asserts that the methodologies for calculating royalties from event promoters and other users is less than robust, and that stronger legislative and regulatory backing is desired. Now, while JAM Copy supports the importance of transparency and accountability, any regulations must be proportionate and reasonable in their expectations and implementations. Regulations that are intrusive in their demands or have the effect of effectively handing control of the operations of the CMO to the state will thwart the operational stability of CMOs, thus adversely impacting rights holders. We have to remember that the intention of the Copyright Act is to encourage copyright owners to manage the use of their private rights in their works. But this would be frustrated, and it would bring uncertainty into the functioning of the creative sector if the regulations are onerous and excessive in their demands. This would undermine confidence in the public-private partnership between the state and the industry. Further, local regulations that are designed in such a fashion that are out of sync with international best practices and standards will hinder rather than strengthen the global collective management ecosystem, labeling Jamaica as a hostile outlier. It is JAMCOP's anticipation, and by extension that of our sister CMOs, JIPO and JAMS, that any CMO regulations passed by the government will reflect in content and implementation the aspirations of this policy to, quote, affirm the government's responsibility to protect, promote, and develop Jamaica's culture and heritage, support creative practitioners, and establish Jamaica as a leading hub for culture, entertainment, and creative innovations, end of quote. I conclude as follows. The vision of the policy is a transformed Jamaica in cultural perception, reflection, and expression. The policy is a 10-year aspirational outlook. We should therefore ask ourselves, what would we like a 2035 Jamaica to look like where copyright development and management is concerned? For JAMCOPI, our desire is a flourishing copyright ecosystem. That 2035 Jamaica would see consistent copyright awareness and respect by users of the written word and artistic works in print, whether they are institutional or commercial users. An IP Awareness Day would be enthusiastically celebrated island-wide across all schools during the annual Intellectual Property Week in April. Introduction to intellectual property could be an established module in primary and secondary schools. We would want to see a sustained training partnership between ministries, departments, and agencies and the CMOs to deepen intra-government stakeholder knowledge and understanding of IP. Compliance would be an integrated business governance practice, and obtaining the relevant copyright license would be second nature to all users of copyright-protected materials. Is this a dream that can be realized? I believe it can. We thank the Joint Select Committee for the opportunity to comment on the national policy for culture, entertainment, and the creative economy. We trust that our recommendations will be integrated into the next iteration of the policy and feature most robustly in its eventual implementation. We look forward and stand ready for further engagement with the Ministry of Culture and its partners. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Senator Bennett Cooper, for holding for me. I'm back.
Ma'am.
Thank you so much. I don't know, you may wish to. First, I want to thank JAMCOPI, which is the third of three collective rights management organizations in Jamaica. I really want to thank you for your work and for your insightful presentation. And I'm going to invite Mrs. Rose Bennett Cooper to ask the first question and or to make her comments.
Thank you so much, Chair. Two questions. I know that compliance continues to be a primary issue in this sector, and I was just wondering if you could share your thoughts on that. What do you think are some things that need to happen to strengthen the issue of compliance? The other thing is, the other question, I think was it at page 5, dealing with your second recommendation, you seem to suggest that the value of the local copyright industry, the industry's economic contribution, is underreported or is it that it is not sufficiently assessed? And I wonder if you could give us an approximation of what you think this amounts to.
Thank you very much, Senator. But first, regarding compliance, certainly it starts with awareness that you ought not to use somebody's copyright-protected works without their permission, and that there's a legal way to pursue this, and that is through either directly contacting the copyright holder or going through the existing licensing agencies. And why it's called collective management, it's recognizing that there is cost and a time burden for every creator, for example, a textbook author, to track down every single child or teacher or school that is making use of their work, and then to negotiate with them in order for them to have legal permission to make copies of extracts of the work. And so a collective management organization is acting on behalf of the collective to save time and money by being the go-in-between. And so awareness that this is a right, that somebody's creativity has been expressed, that it is an asset, it has value, economic value, and that they are entitled to earn from the use of their works. And therefore you ought not to steal their intellectual expression by making copies without permission. So awareness is fundamental, and then being aware that there are legal routes and that licensing bodies are here to assist. And certainly for the institutional users, so whether it's the tertiary institutions or the Ministry of Education or businesses, to know that when you negotiate, you're actually going to be getting a lower fare or fee by the collective negotiation rather than directly negotiating with every single owner of the work that you use. So awareness and then accessing the legal routes. Because of the digital age and the easy...
Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought you were going to be moving on to the second question.
Well, just to add that in our digital age, persons believe that once it's online, it's free, and I don't need to pay or ask for permission. And this is the challenge that we have with the digital age. Not because it is easily accessible online means that you can go ahead and download or upload and print and make copies without getting permission. You would need to examine whether there's a disclaimer allowing for easy access, or whether copyright is still retained and therefore you would need to get permission.
Thank you so much. If I may, Madam Chair, to just on the same issue, when one thinks of compliance, you've got to focus on the issues of monitoring and enforcement. Is that an area that you would say you have a handle on, or is that something that needs to be strengthened?
Sorry, could you repeat your question, please? I couldn't hear.
Monitoring and enforcement to achieve compliance, is this something that needs to be strengthened? And how do your organization deal with that?
Yes, it is. Monitoring and enforcement. Now, we recognize, it is to be recognized that copyright is a private right, and therefore it would be for the rights holders to be vigilant as to the use of the work, hence their relationship with a licensing body, and therefore we are acting on their behalf to identify users and to approach them and to invite them to be legal by getting a license. But we also recognize that if they were, or if we were to take legal action against infringers, this is going to court, and there are costs and time frames involved, which is why we would rather users to desire to be compliant with the law and to recognize that they're using somebody's creative work. Now, you had asked about the underappreciation, I would say the undervaluation and underappreciation of the value of this sector. Now, I can easily say that the music sector itself would be billions of Jamaican dollars. The literary and artistic less so, but I would say that this area would definitely be quantifiable in the billions in terms of its value to the Jamaican economy.
In the billions?
Yes.
What you have distributed to your membership based on, Madam Chair, but just on the same point, I'm pressing your kindness. What you've distributed to your membership, approximately 425 million, and I'm curious whether you think this is a mere fraction of what, if there was compliance, you'd be in a position to pay out.
Absolutely, because not everyone has a license from JAMCOPY, and even those that do have a license are not always timely with the payment of their license fee, even though they have used the work. And because we are not capturing 100% of all uses of works, then there are persons or entities that may be using the work and are not compliant and not legal. And I should also mention that copyright lasts for the lifetime of the author, plus currently 95 years after death. I don't know if that would change. Originally it was 50 years. And so your entitlement to earn from the use of the work is not just today, but it's for your lifetime. And after you've passed, you can bequeath your copyright to your beneficiaries who would also enjoy, for a period of time, the fruits of your labor. So we are talking in a long term, quite a substantial value that is attributed to copyright protected works.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, great. Thank you. Member Bernard, you have any? Oh, Senator. Go ahead, Senator Thames.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Ms. Davies. I wonder whether you could expand on something that you said earlier. You mentioned in particular the music industry and the need for the protection of the use of their works. I think you said in relation to promoters, you said that regulatory backing would be needed. Could you give us a bit more information? What would that look like?
Thank you very much, Senator. I was actually quoting from the policy where it said that, let me just find it one moment, please. Right, it was actually quoting from the policy where they, I guess certain stakeholders had indicated that they needed stronger regulations for event promoters. And I was making the point that we're not music, we're literary, but that we should also be featured in the policy, but that beyond the regulations for event promoters, we had indicated what those regulations should look like. And we're asking for reasonableness, we're asking for balance, we're asking for fairness and regulations that are not onerous or excessive in their demands or have the effect of overtaking management of the CMO and handing it to the state by virtue of how the regulations are designed and implemented.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Member Thames. Now, Member Bernard, you wanted to make a comment, ask questions, anything? Yeah.
I had a similar comment earlier. Ms. Davis addressed it. You know, I think it's a very important area, but JAMCOPY seem to be amalgamated under the CMOs in the policy as opposed to be given the question is similar, or the comment is similar to the previous one. The importance of a JAMCOPY to the creative industry. It's not mentioned in the policy. And I'm happy that you also have that concern, as opposed to it being amalgamated under the CMOs. It's an important job that you do. But I think I just want to also add, Senator Bennett Cooper would have asked questions about enforcement. I think just listening to what it is that is leaked, you know, through the usage of other people's work, I am just thinking of how many times I would have breached this policy. You know, I photocopy things every day and give them out as handout to my students. You know, and I don't even care about who writes the book. I think it's just part of the course, and a lot has gone out. But it's enforcement is difficult, is it not? It doesn't appear to be practical in many instances. And I think the policy recognizes that, you know, piracy is rampant. If that's, I don't think that's the word used in the policy, but, you know, there's a lot of piracy that takes place, and enforcement is weak, if not impractical. But what would be some of your suggestions, beyond what already exists in the regular law enforcement world? You would have heard our colleague from JIPO made mention of a particular unit in the JCF that looks at intellectual property rights breaches. But what other recommendations would you have to stop the leakage or to enforce some of these breaches? Because I'm thinking that a lot of it is just so it go. How do you stop me from photocopying three chapters from my text because it's unavailable and give it to my students? And I want them to do well in the exams. But that's just my concern, your views.
Well, I thank you, Senator, for your honesty and acknowledging where you. This is reason then for the need for information, awareness, and a transformative approach to how we use protected works. And so JIPO spoke about this specialized unit within the JCF who would handle the criminal dimension of mass copying or making copies of works without permission. And that would be pirated works. But there's a civil side where the rights holder would have the right to sue a user for using their work without their permission. And so there is cost to taking legal action, but if this is necessary, then rights holders have done or would do so, or the CMO would act on behalf of our members to take legal action against users who have acted without a license. We would rather compliance because this is a long-term relationship. An educational institution that is making copies without a JAM copy license, as long as they're in the business of teaching and learning, they're going to be using copyright-protected works. We'd rather not sue you. We'd rather that you take out the license. And because this is negotiated, we ask our prospective licensees to come and talk to us for us to discuss the fee. Our fee is based on the number of students that are at the institution. We also recognize that there are works that are freely available, open access, or works that are outside of copyright, or the institution may produce its own works, therefore it holds its own copyright. We would not be licensing what we don't have rights over. It's those other works that they do not have ownership of or do not have direct permission to make use of. So we'd rather compliance, but if it's necessary to take legal action, and we have done so in the past, but because we recognize this is a long-term relationship, we would rather compliance. We'd rather teachers and lecturers to, through their institution, obtain the license from JAM copy, or if it's the music users, to get the license in order to legally cover that their actions. It's moral suasion, Senator Bernard. It's moral suasion because we'd rather not go to court. But we can, and the law does allow us to do so.
Just to bring closure. So as I understand it, the policy already recognized that and understands that largely that is a personal responsibility on the creators to do that. So the policy, I think, covers that. But we find that individuals might not have the resources to pursue these. What would you like to see the policy do to support the creators? I think that's pretty much the question, because I think we all agree the policy, what we have in front of us now, and I think the conversation here, it's hard to enforce, it's difficult, but creators can explore the civil aspect of it. Many of the creators maybe, quite possibly do not have the resources to go that route.
Right.
So would you like to recommend an approach to be taken in the policy to support? I think that's where I was going with the
Right.
question.
Well, certainly the government would have an authoritative voice to say that copyright is important to the economy, it's foundational for education and communication, and therefore the law must be complied with, and there are these organizations that will assist you to be compliant. That would certainly have great weight. I must say that even though the government of Jamaica took out the license from JAM Copy and was our very first licensee in 2001, that license only covered ministries, departments, and agencies. It took us 15 years to get the Ministry of Education to get a license. That was only in 2021 that the Ministry of Education, which is using copyright protected words every day, primary and secondary schools. It was unfortunate, but we were happy to have had that license obtained. But I think that it would be helpful in our work for an authoritative voice and statement to say copyright is important, you must be compliant. All ministries, all departments, businesses, educational institutions, once you're using copyright protected words, be compliant. This is how we build a respectful, copyright respectful culture.
Good. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ms. Davies, for your presentation. And I know members found it very useful, very informative. And we have noted again the importance placed by our creatives on IP. I always say to our creatives, IP is your pension. You know? And of course, specifically the protection of IP rights and the collection of royalties for creative work. So this has been a common thread running through several of the previous presentations to the committee. And it is one of the central pillars on which this policy stands in its goal of protecting our creatives' rights and professionalizing and advancing the creative economy, which is, if not the fastest growing economy in the world, because at the center of it is our human resource, our people, the orange economy. And our green paper is timely. We intend to use it as a roadmap going forward. And we do not want to drag out the process. We want to move as expeditiously as possible to finalize the policy, take it back to Parliament as a white paper, and then proceed to write legislation that would give the kind of support and mechanism to the sector for growth. So I really want to thank two presenters today and to indicate to members that we have a lot of work to do. We have a long list of other presentations. We are going to make sure that the Rastafari community is also at the table to make their presentations, as well as the religious and faith-based sector. And as I had explained before, we refer to sports as physical culture. So their input will also be made in the development of our policy. I want to use the opportunity to acknowledge the presence of 15 interns who are here with us today. There are 12 interns from the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment, and Sport, and 3 interns who are assigned to the Parliament. I hope that you have found the exercise interesting. Hope you don't think that it's boring. I hope not. Very good. So shake the heads. It's not boring. But I know for sure you find it interesting, because this is the process, and you're being exposed to the process. And I look forward to seeing you again at the next meeting. I've been here from 10 this morning. We did the domestic violence, review of the Domestic Violence Act, And now we have just concluded our discussions on the green paper or the culture and creative entertainment, culture and creative industries policy. So with those few words, I want to ask members if there's any other business. Go ahead, Member Bernard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to go back to the scheduling and the list, Madam Chair. You'd have added some more names. And it's a long list. And we have not been, in my estimation, progressing as expeditiously as we would want. And so, I want to make a recommendation. We might need to increase the number of speakers, of organizations per sitting, and we might want to, in the interest of time, see the duration. Another recommendation I'd want to make, and I'm looking back now at all the presentations so far. Most of the organizations would have started their presentation by explaining to us what the organization does. And while I appreciate that, that's information that we could get otherwise. And if we could encourage the organizations to commence right at the point when they begin to speak to the green paper, maybe we could get out some more. I recall that we said we wanted to complete this process this year. I'm not sure with this extended list and the frequency with which we meet and the number of organizations that are able to present if we will actually get through. So those are 3 recommendations I would want to make to increase the number of organizations that make a presentation to us the number of time we sit, to allocate a particular time period, and to encourage the organizations to begin their presentation at the moment when they begin to focus on the green paper itself, because much of the information we could get otherwise. I personally know that I would go online and just read up on the organizations before, so I wouldn't need to look at that again. Just want to really expedite the process. Finally, Madam Chair, and I know that you said it, but I'm hoping, I think the way in which the organizations come to us, they're in blocks, and I think where their mandates are kind of similar. So we would have heard from a number of the CMOs so far, and maybe complementary organizations, but I'm hoping that we can begin to hear from some of the other organizations across the different sectors. Certainly, as you rightly say, a lot of Rastafari and indigenous organizations and the faith-based and other cultural organizations are on the list, and we'd love to get some of those in as well. So those are some recommendations going forward. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we'll certainly take on board the suggestions that you're making here, remember, and we will, for future meetings, we'll ensure we have a much tighter presentation from the presenters. I've asked the clerk to explore the possibility of doing a matrix of the presentations that we have already received to see where there is commonality, where there's the recommendations are common among the various entities that have sent in presentations. And I'm also going to put it to the committee that we consider doing a retreat so we can look at the matrix, look at the presentations, and come out with some kind of document that would reflect the input of the consultations that we have had, and to see if we can really use that to fast track the work that we are doing. I certainly would want to recommend to the committee that by the end of the calendar year, that we would have received presentations and reviewed the green paper. And by the end of the fiscal year, we would be able to take a report to Parliament and to table the white paper. But we should ensure that within that period, we would have achieved our goal of having a policy and what I call a roadmap to providing the support that the sector wants. So if we have to meet more than once through between now and the end of the year, we can also meet virtually. We don't have to be in person here. We can maybe have a series of virtual meetings and a retreat to see how we can fast track the work that we are doing. I see Member Daly. Her hand is
yes,
up.
thank you very much, Chairman.
Please go ahead.
I'm going to be very quick because I am on from 10 o'clock this morning too. So I'm going to be very quick. But let me put on my camera just to say that I am in total agreement with you, and especially the last recommendation in respect to, since we're having virtual meetings, we would be able to have it more frequently if the staff will allow us at Parliament, because today, listening to two of the presenters, I realized there's a lot to digest, a lot to research, a lot to look at in terms of what we would want to keep and what we would want to probably alter or to recommend that we remove and replace. So it is very important, Madam Speaker, and the creative industry more so, because I realize we have not touched much on the other areas in terms of culture, but we stick today on the creative industry, or most of our conversation was on the creative industry today. So I strongly believe we might have to have some virtual meetings, and I welcome the retreat. I think it's the only way we'll be able to achieve our goals and meet the deadlines. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Daly. We have a lot of work to do. I hope you had lunch after the meeting this morning.
I had coffee, Chairman, coffee.
Okay. I see Member Bennett Cooper. You could go ahead and make your comments as well.
Thank you so much, Chair. As you know, I too have been here since morning. In fact, I was here from 5 to 10. And when we broke before this meeting, I went into another meeting to come to this meeting. But there you have it. The work continues. Just to quickly say, ma'am, that the recommendations from Senator Bernard I find favor with. I would, however, say that that element of his recommendation where he proposes that the presenters do not include an in-depth explanation of who you are, because that information is available easily elsewhere. I would prefer if they continue to provide all that information, because it's not always open to all of us to find the time to do the research on all that needs to be researched. And that is perhaps the reason why I mentioned the way in which my day progressed. And if I recall correctly, it was earlier today that we in fact got these reports or these documents. So I would think that I'd be happy if all the information, if there's a continuation of providing all the information, there is no harm in that. They could start their actual oral presentation at a particular point, but they would have given us the complete, we would get the benefit of the complete presentation, including complete written presentation, including an indication of who they are and what they are about, instead of having to try and track it down elsewhere. Those are my thoughts on that. Thank you, Chair.
Good, thank you. Thank you. So we'll take that on board as well. All right, so Now, members, JCAP, the Jamaica Association of Composers, Authors, and Publishers, they made a presentation to us earlier, but they wish to come back to make a second presentation to the committee, and I'm seeking the committee's approval to invite them to come back and make a presentation. I would recommend that we allow them to do so. So I would ask the committee to support that request. And if I don't hear any objections, I will consider that you agree for us to do so. All right, agreed. Thank you. Thank you. So at this point, all that's left for us to do is to determine the next meeting. Member Bennett Cooper, you wanted to say something?
No, Madam Chair. My hand was up and I spoke. I delayed taking the hand down, but I've now done so.
Okay. All right. So our next meeting, I would like to suggest that we ask the clerk to just reach out and see a date that's convenient to members. And at that point, we will sign off on a date. We are on a break for August, well-deserved break. And then we will start again in September, our series of meetings. So, colleagues, I thank you for your continued dedication to this work. What we are building here is not simply a policy document. It is a declaration that Jamaica values her creators, her culture, and her creative future. So let us leave here today more resolved than when we arrived. And I look forward to our next session in September. Have a great independence, emancipation, independence celebration, and a break from Parliament in August, and see you back in September. So will someone move forward? And I want to thank the technical team. They didn't get too much work today to do. And to thank our presenters. All right, so will someone move for the motion?
Seconded.
All right, so moved by Member Daly and seconded by?
Bennett Cooper.
Well, I think Member Bernard first you to it. So seconded by Senator Alan Bernard. All right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We now adjourn. Thank you.
Good one all. Bye-bye.
Wild World at the San Diego Zoo.
Celebrate the diversity and wonders of the animal kingdom on Wild World. Mondays at 10 a.m. and Wednesdays at noon.
Peace begins with us. Every act of kindness, every step towards understanding brings us closer to a brighter tomorrow. Let's choose unity, compassion, and hope. Together, we can build a future where peace reigns.
Brighter tomorrow starting today.
Embark on a journey to discover the truth that sets us free. Join us on Tomorrow's World, your weekly source of hope, answers, and divine insight. Sundays at 9 a.m. with rebroadcasts on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 5:30 a.m. Tune in right here on PBCJ, the People's Station, and be inspired.
Join your big sister Raquel as she reintroduces the cast of Vibrations and their educational adventures to the screen. See Ronson and the gang experience the world firsthand through interviews and interactions. Vibrations, where kids are taught about the world from someone they can relate to. Join us every Friday at 3:30 p.m. to hang out with your big sister Raquel and the kids of Vibrations. Right here on PBCJ, the People's Station.
Jamaica is your homeland. You are not homeless or stateless. What we are trying to build here is a place where every Jamaican can feel proud and comfortable to come back home. That's what we want to build here, your homeland. And if you're finding it difficult where you are, come back here. Ackee and saltfish was always good. It's on the tree, you can get it. Don't stay there and suffer. Come back home. But as I said before, don't come back here to destroy your homeland and what we have been working very hard to create so that you wouldn't have had to leave in the first place.